And joining me now is Chris Robertshaw, Douglas East, and looking back over the last year, in also looking forward to your last part of being a parliamentarian. Yeah. Definitely 100%. But
oh, absolutely. Okay. Yes, I'm getting towards being an old fart now.
Can you say that word? It's okay.
It's okay.
Right, listen. We were talking about other things the other day when you came in as well, but let's just do you and last year, or over your last 5 years, whatever you want to do, really, because what's been the highlight?
No, the last year, I think, Paul, because it has been an extraordinary year, hasn't it? But absolutely extraordinary.
If I can ask you about, we kind of start with how they've dealt with the COVID situation, the government. Yeah. How do you think they did?
Well, let's begin with the people of the Isle of Man, who've been absolutely brilliant in their response. I mean, spectacularly good. I think there's been a huge amount of good work that's gone on in government itself. The officers, really putting their heart and soul into trying to deliver things, and of course the health service. But there are buts. There really are buts. There's during the emergency powers main area, there was this is more political than anything else. There was an element of trying to manipulate the media, which I was uncomfortable with. I was also uncomfortable, unsettled, I think is a better word, as the main part of the close down period was progressing. It was the relationship between Department of Health and Social Care and the care sector. One has to bear in mind that our CEO of DHSC was actually operating most of the time off island. And we all know the disastrous relationship in the UK between the health service and the care sector, the home care sector. The fact that, there's reports coming out now that up to 40% of the COVID cases in the UK occurred because hospitals were sending out people from hospitals into care homes. Which is we're talking about something close to 20,000 people. Now over here, a number of us noticed during the lockdown period, when we were trying to conduct our business through Microsoft Teams and Zoom and everything else, that one or two of us were uncomfortable with the relationship between the health service and the care homes. There was a sort of a somewhat, perhaps dismissive is too strong a word, but the whole focus was on, and understandably, was on the hospital, and we all got that. But the consequence of that was that the care homes themselves weren't supported as much as I believe they should be. And my particular concern, and this is where we get to the point, is Abbotswood. Now, the issue with Abbotswood was that, and I think this is important to say this, that the registration and inspections team within the Department of Health and Social Care, just before the crisis, gave Abbotswood a very clean bill of health.
I think there was a couple of things that had to improve, remember rightly, on their little
yes,
but it wasn't anything particularly big.
Routine things. And then when we had that terrible sequence of deaths, the roof fell in on Abbotswood. My point here is that it isn't just a question of examining what happened at Abbotswood, but it should be a question of what actually was going on within the Department of Health and Social Care in their response to everything. And what's concerning is that immediately the situation became clear and apparent. There was a peculiar response from the health and from the Department of Health and Social Care, in the sense that we're shutting everything down. This might be a police matter. There's going to be an investigation. Well, as far as I know, and I could be proved wrong, but as far as I know, as of today, there are no charges. This is not sub judice.
It's interesting, sir, because I was under the impression that I was about to stop you going any further by saying, well, we keep hearing it's a police matter. We always keep hearing it's a police matter.
Why are we saying it's a police matter when actually there are no charges
that you know of? And
it's an uncomfortable. This is what's unsettling. It's an uncomfortable attempt within the department to focus all the attention, and by innuendo and suggestion, that the fault lies in one particular place. And I am concerned that, for example, there was talk of an independent investigation. That independent investigation turned out to be Expol, which is a detective agency. The detective agency knows nothing about care issues. It couldn't be done by the registration and inspections team because they sat inside the department, and you might recall from Sir Jonathan Michael's report that registration and inspection should not sit inside the department, and yet they did. They gave a clean bill of health to the Abbotswood prior to the disastrous outcome, but we were then told there'd be an independent investigation by Expol, but it seems, from what I can gather, and I can't be certain about this, that registration inspections were involved in the commissioning of Expol, so they were conflicted. Not comfortable about that at all.
I know we're going to be talking about you last year, but I have got to go back to something you said near the beginning of this, and I'm sure you don't mind. Manipulating the media, you said. The chief, you talk about the chief, we talk about how, in the press conferences, how was the media manipulated? And we're talking about COVID again, aren't we, the whole thing?
Yeah, we're talking about COVID. We're talking about the emergency powers and the degree of control that was placed on everything during that period. And it was disturbing to a number of us that effectively the media were controlled to a greater degree than I thought was appropriate. You'll recall that a number of media outlets were actually had then the number of times they attended the press conferences reduced. And that other bodies came in, and it was the other bodies that came in that really were a matter of concern for some of us, in the sense that, let's be blunt, let's speak as it is. Jeff the Mongoose was brought in as a journalistic organisation. No, it wasn't. It had one journalist who was appointed pretty well 24 hours before they first went on to the press conference, and the whole approach was frankly infantile and sycophantic, and it played to the press conferences that we were seeing before us, and the reason that more professional journalistic organisations were removed from press conferences for some of the time was that there were too many people in the room. But that was generated by the comms team themselves, and this is where it really gets worrying. The comms team at that time were actually controlled by the Director of External Affairs, and I think that's a Crown appointment.
That's Peter Boxer, is it?
Yeah. Now, Peter Boxer's role as a Crown appointee also covers elections, general elections, and must be utterly unbiased. And yet what happened during the press conferences effectively was through the offices of Jeff the Mongoose that became a sort of sycophantic, sympathetic, highly sympathetic approach to certain politicians who then were, as it were, presented into the public arena in almost cartoon manner.
The Howie and Ashy stuff, you mean?
Yes, I mean that was inappropriate for the seriousness of the circumstances we were in. It wasn't the way the Isle of Man normally conducts itself. It was worrying.
Okay, well, sorry for taking so much time up with that, but
it's
obviously,
all right.
In the last minute of this section, anything else that stood out for you in your last 12 months or over this whole?
Yes, I mean, if we're
years?
going to be critical, let's finish it off.
Yeah.
And that was, fortunately, it was resolved pretty quickly. But the repatriation process, when it first started, was cringe-making, and it was again overuse of authority and power. Fortunately, it was sorted reasonably quickly, but that was unfortunate. So there were those three areas that I've identified, and it's about time that we started to address some of those, rather than this constant process that nobody does anything wrong. We all do something wrong some other time, and those issues need to be pointed out.